Do we get a Kyle Tucker decision today, which is basically asking if I'm going to cry on stream or not? Plus, we get a little bit more ready for the NFL playoffs and a lot more ready for the NFL offseason for the teams that are now in that mode. Plus, maybe it's story time. Couch Potato Diary Live starts right now. I always forget I have to hit the button that gets me back from that one. Anyway, welcome everyone. Couch Potato Diary. We are live on a Thursday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. As always, you saw it in the bottom there, but let's hit it again because I like how I made that. It is presented by Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca and get all this great Calgary swag. Yeah. We're here. It's Thursday. We got Toxic in the Twitch chat. A lot of Kyle Tucker chatter today. I am very ready for this show to get derailed entirely because I have my phone set up right here with the notifications on X. I am perfectly ready to get the pass-in. Blue Jays have signed Kyle Tucker to the biggest contract in the history of the world and completely roll with that one. So, yes. A lot of Kyle Tucker chatter today, Toxic. So hopefully it goes positively for the team that I'm obviously repping here with the jersey, trying to get that good luck going. Also on YouTube, we have Tuck It in the Waistband saying, how about some behind-the-scenes stories from the full-time gig on the morning show? I was thinking about that because I saw that here a couple minutes before I went live on the stream here today. And yeah, Toxic, it could be a two-stream day again. I was thinking about that, and I was like, okay, like I was, for those who don't know, I was full-time on the morning show for 11 months, and it was an unbelievable experience, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to. I don't really have, like, I would love to come on here and do, like, the hot goss thing, and like, oh my god, you would never believe that this, that, and the other thing that happened, but... You guys, the thing that made that show work, even when I was on it, and it was working less than it did in other versions of it, the thing that made that show work is that there wasn't a difference between the behind the scenes and the and what you guys got on the radio. The reason that show worked as well as it did, and the reason why they're having the success they're having now, over with everything they're doing. With Barn Burner and everything there, is because what you see is 100% what you get. Like those guys are those guys on the air, off the air. If Boomer was sour ass on that day, he was sour ass behind the scenes, and then it came on the mic, and he was blank this, blank that, blank everyone else, right? Like there was no hiding it. There was no pretending to be anything that we weren't or anything. It was just some dudes hanging out talking sports. I guess the closest thing to behind the scenes stuff, and it was something that got me quite frustrated. And looking back on it, like I kind of get it still, but it was a little bit frustrating, is that I learned very quickly that there were things that Boomer could do that I couldn't in the eyes of the Rogers folks. Like, we did this one thing where I forget what it was, but it was a contest where they were making the draw, and it was Monday at 8 a.m. They were doing the draw, and they were like, the deadline is Monday at 6. You got to get your thing in. And Boomer came on, and he was like, make sure you're in by Friday. You know, they're not waking up at 6 in the morning to make this draw. So you gotta get in on this now. And kind of like drumming up the excitement for it, because that's what you want when you have giveaways like that. By the way, forgot I'm doing this. Over on Twitch, we got 35% off 5 gifted subs for the next couple of days. So get that in actually by Sunday morning if you want to get in on that. But we have, you want to drum up excitement. You want to get as many people involved in the giveaways as you can, as quickly as you can, right? You don't want people waiting for the last minute. You want to show the people that have invested the money in your product that, that return on investment is happening throughout the entirety of it, and not just for 1 hour when people are like, oh, fuck, I forgot to put in on that, and click enter. And so Boomer, in his own way, was like, yeah, don't wait for Saturday to do this. They're making the draw before they leave on Friday. So just get it in now. And so I came on, and I was at the time dating someone who was in promotions. That at that point she was at another station. But I said, look, he's right on this. Like there are times where it's like, no, It's the weekend. Let's pick a winner and let's get out of here. So I don't have to wake up at 7:30 in the morning and get in on this draw. And so I said that, and Boomer, everyone was chuckling at him with it. Me, I got 4 emails and an in-person talking to at an event we went to the next day about how you can't be doing things like that. And so there was a lot of those types of things that were happening there. But in terms of like crazy behind the scenes stories or anything like that, like there wasn't a ton, like a lot. If there was something that was crazy happening behind the scenes, whether it was me or more so Boomer or Pinder or whoever it was, they'd be like, okay, this is gold. We have to get it on the air. So that there wasn't a whole lot that you guys didn't know about. And I think that's what made the show as cool as it was that you guys basically got the behind the scenes. And that's why, there aren't a whole lot of shows like it. Even now, there aren't a whole lot of shows like it because everyone in that world wants everything to be as structured as you can. And I fall into it too. Here, like I'm doing a Twitch stream and I'm regimenting it out like a radio show. When I could just be like sitting back and shooting the shit, talking about the time I sent an ATV off of a cliff in Mexico. So, but yeah, like so many shows want to be, no, we're talking about sports and we have to do it this time and this time and this time. And that show is just like, yeah, fuck it, man. We're just going to talk about what we want to talk about. And we're going to do our, like, behind-the-scenes meetings. We're going to do those on the air. And we're going to do all of that. So the cool thing about that show was that there wasn't much behind the scenes. It was you guys got it. You guys got everything that was going on there. So, like, even when we were frustrated with the bosses, we would have some things. Like, we would say that stuff, right? Like, I don't know if any music director, program director, anyone got as much shit on the air as Kirsch did from the 960 group. Like, I don't know how many other bosses have people making fun of, or not even making fun of, but just like doing impersonations of the and all that stuff, you know? So, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot left unturned on that show. But if you have any more specific things, or if I think of any more, we'll talk about it as we go along. But so for all the non-Calgary people, we may have lost already, but we're going to get into some more stuff. And yes, prepared on a dime to drop everything if Kyle Tucker is a Blue Jay, a Met, a Dodger, or out of nowhere, a Pittsburgh Pirate. So let's get in and start talking some NFL as we get into the divisional round. This is, as they would say on the morning show when I was there, this is going to be very sportsy now. But we're looking at the NFL Divisional Round. 4 matchups. The Elite 8 in the NFL is set up. Who are going to be the difference makers? Who are the X factors in those games that are going to decide who is playing for a conference championship in 7 days' time? Well, I'll tell you. Let's talk some National Football League here on a Thursday. So, the NFL Divisional Round is here, and with it comes some big performances over the years, and some big performances that are needed if their team is going to advance to the conference finals. So today, going to go through each matchup and look at who are the X factors for that game. And we're going to go in chronological order here. Buffalo against Denver first. I think the X factor in this one, this was the easiest one to come up with, probably. Like, I was typing these out, put all the games in, and before I even got to the next one, it was just Buffalo/Denver, boom, Keon Coleman. No question. Buffalo's beat up at wide receiver. You have Superman as your quarterback. Coleman has an opportunity to burst out of the doghouse he has found himself in for a lot of the season and show everyone what he can do. I am a big believer in the talent of this kid. I have been a fan of his for a while, and that's why I made him a breakout star at the beginning of the season. Probably one I would like back at this particular time, because it has it. If this is a breakout season, he's really waiting a long time to break. But he still can. I still think there's a talented receiver in there for the Bills. Buffalo needs him now. With everything they have going on at receiver, and with the high-level secondary that the Denver Broncos can provide, and with the pass rush that the Broncos can bring, this is someone that Josh Allen needs to get open and needs to get open quickly and make the plays when he has to. If he doesn't, Buffalo's not winning this game. The Bills are not winning a knockdown, drag it out, grind it out type of a game against this Denver Broncos team. So they need Keon Coleman to be that offensive difference maker for them in the passing game here in the divisional round. And I think he can. Like I'm a big believer in the kid, and maybe this is a I need to give up on him sort of a thing, but I really do think that he is going to be able to break out in this matchup. Next, we have the Seahawks taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And for me, the X factor in this one is the San Francisco pass rush. Again, a significant amount of injuries, 2 significant players happening over on San Francisco's side. They are outmanned in this game. They probably aren't as good of a football team as Seattle is, even when everybody's healthy. But now especially, they're behind. So what they need now is to put pressure on Sam Darnold. We said before, Sam Darnold can handle only one of the two, of a really good pass rush and pressure on the quarterback, or real life pressure from the stakes of the game. He can't handle both. He cannot have a good performance in a game that means a lot when there's a lot of pressure in his face. So San Francisco needs to get that pressure on Sam Darnold and maybe even sell out on it a little bit. JSN's going to beat you down the field if you're rushing 3 or if you're rushing 7. So I think you got to get in Darnold's face, make him make mistakes, try to keep this game close, and let Brock Purdy do what he does in these types of situations with Christian McCaffrey. I was going to then list the rest of the players that they have. That's basically it. You need Juwan Jennings to make some catches down the field as well, and Robinson to have the breakout game that he had from a game ago. But that pass rush has to be a difference maker in this game. They have to be in Sam Darnold's face. They're going to need... It's crazy. They're going to need this to be probably a bit of a lower scoring game. Because of the injuries they have and how good that Seattle defense is, they're going to need to keep this game probably low and close all throughout the day. And the only way they're doing that is if Sam Darnold is making a lot of mistakes, and you can make him do that by getting a pass rush into his face. I'm interested by this one. I wish everyone was healthy because I think it'd be a better matchup, but the injuries really hurt it. Obviously. Up next, the Texans taking on the New England Patriots. And I think the X factor in this game, this was the second obvious one. It's Will Campbell for the Patriots. He was getting beat pretty consistently by the Chargers in the wild card round. Drake May was really good, and they were able to survive that. These are different pass rushers, though. If Danielle Hunter is blowing past you, that's a little bit different than what the Chargers had at this point in the season. That is the only hope that the Texans have, I think, in this one, because of some of the issues they have on the offensive line. CJ Stroud did not look good in the wild card round. If he can be the quarterback that I believe he can, then this is going to be maybe a bit of a closer game. But if Drake May has time to stretch the field and pick up some of those big plays, then this is not going to be a good day for the Houston Texans. And conversely, if May is constantly under pressure, constantly having to scramble around and try to make some plays, this is too good of a secondary to be making desperation throws against. It's too good of a secondary to be trying to scramble around and make a couple of big plays on. They're going to hit you, and they're going to hit you really hard. So they need Will Campbell to hold up on that blind side, keep Drake May protected, and allow him to have the explosive plays that this offense really does thrive in. This is, I think to me, this is probably the most intriguing matchup of the divisional round. Last up, we have the Rams taking on the Bears, and the X factor from this is the Bears linebacking core, the Rams linebacking core. Bears is going to be important too, with how much Matthew Stafford likes to attack the middle of the field with, and how much success they had against Carolina in attacking the middle of the field with the tight ends there and everything else. But the Bears were able to get a lot of success with Loveland and creating a lot of opportunities with the tight end. This is a pretty athletic group of linebackers on the Rams side. if they can limit what Loveland can do, then it takes away a pretty reliable passing target for the Bears. And the other big part of it too is they're probably going to be manned with charging in at Caleb Williams a lot, blitzing, as the actual football lingo would go. But they're going to be that's going to be a big part of what they are looking to do. So if they can either get to him, or what I think is going to be really important, even when you're coming in on the rush, you have to keep contained on Caleb Williams. He has made some really good throws, obviously. Like he's really good. He's really talented. But when he gets really dangerous is, again, when he's outside the pocket, scrambling and creating with his legs. If the Rams can try to keep him as a pocket passer, if we're going pocket passer for pocket passer, the Rams got the better one. So this linebacking core is going to be key for kind of locking those guys in and trying to keep everything really bottled up for Los Angeles and Chicago there. So those are the players that I think are going to have the biggest hand in deciding this NFL Divisional Round weekend. What about you? Was there someone that I'm completely missing on? Was there something I'm completely wrong on? Who do you think is going to decide this playoff round? Let me know, either in the chat if you're watching live or in the comments if you are watching after the fact. Also, I think we're having some fun hanging out, chatting live today, or if you're watching after the fact, I think some pretty good football talk here. Share it with your friends. We're trying to grow the channel. Really need to grow this channel and need to grow it quickly. So the best way to do that, the best way you can help me out is hitting that share button and sending it out to some of your football fan friends, and we can keep that conversation going. I love the people that we have in the chat all the time. I just wish we all had more people to talk football with. So hit that share button and we can get that going. Because, yeah, like I said, really need to start growing this one a little bit more here. I have another one for you, Tuck in the Waistband, if you're still there. Thinking on the football thing and some behind-the-scenes stories from the morning show. Again, if you're just popping in, I was on the morning show in Calgary for just about a year. We did I forget what we called them, but it was the football picks of the week. We had a sponsorship with Sports Select, and so we would do our absolute lock parlays of the whatever. And we threw out a ton, right? Because we wanted to make it these big gargantuan numbers. Like, you put $10 down, you could win $2,000. So we're going to go big underdog here, and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And we all kept losing. And so we got a message at one point that was like, love the enthusiasm. You guys are really bringing it. If you could win a little more, we'd appreciate that a little bit. So if you could, let's not try to go big. Because, if you put $10 down and you win 90, that's $80. That is more money than you had before. So can you on the big stuff, and let's just get some singles here, shall we? And I think honestly that was directed more at me, because I was certainly the one who was trying to go the minus 13.5 underdog, money line straight up. We're going with it. Let's roll. And trying to hit some big ones that way. And I was just having a bad year with picks too. So there's a little bit more behind the scenes for you there, Tuck. But yeah, hopefully you're still hanging out and still enjoying some of these. If there's anything specific from the show that you want me to talk about, absolutely let me know with that one. We've talked about how important these next few games are for the teams in the playoffs. And obviously, you have a chance to win a Super Bowl. And we're talking about X factors. Who is going to be that deciding factor in winning these playoff games? Well, for the teams that are done, they now have a long time to figure out what went wrong and which X factors they now need to bring in and how they can get into these games next season. We've already done the breakdown on the teams that didn't make the playoffs. Today, we're going to look at the teams that were eliminated from the postseason. Here is the off-season preview for the teams that were bounced wildcard weekend. All right, of the teams that were knocked out, again, we're going to go kind of chronologically here based on when they were eliminated. And we're going to start with the Carolina Panthers. They are going to have the 19th overall pick in the draft and around $25 million in salary cap space. This was obviously a year of growth for Carolina, and they're an interesting team to look at here off-season wise, because on the one hand, won the division, made the playoffs, showed very good growth and improvement and showed that they have a lot to be excited about. On the other hand, they were 8-9, and when you look at some of the secondary stats, they were basically in the 20s of everything offensively when you're looking at EPA, EPA per pass, EPA per rush, success rate, all those things. They were still in the bottom third of the league in a lot of those categories. It was wildly inconsistent and not necessarily deserving of a spot in the playoffs, despite them actually playing in the postseason. So on the one hand, yay, development, but on the other hand, let's not look at anything on this team and be, oh, well, we couldn't improve on that. Look what we have. That being said, there are pieces that you like. I think skill position wise, they're okay. Bryce Young at least showed enough that he is worth sticking around with, and you don't need to cut bait and roll like it may have looked a couple of seasons ago. I like the running back situation there. I think Chuba Hubbard did show on wildcard weekend that he is the better of the running backs, but a pretty good two-headed monster out there. And I like the receiving room. McMillan is going to keep growing. Xavier Legette feels like a really, really strong kind of deep threat. And Coker has developed into a pretty solid option as well. I would like something a little bit more reliable on like 3rd and 7, but I don't think you need to spend a lot of time or off-season resources on that necessarily. Maybe an improvement at tight end. I didn't put that on here, but maybe something there to just get something a little bit more reliable for your young quarterback in some of those medium to long third downs there. But I think the big need for this team is on the interior of the offensive line. You have a small quarterback. There's no getting around it. We can do Marcus Stroman, height doesn't measure heart, and we can do, well, look at all these small quarterbacks who've been able to produce. The fact is, when dude is making a throw and the pocket's around him, it looks like he almost has to jump first to make the throw. He's been successful at times at doing it, but you can see, like, he almost stands up on his tippy toes every time he's throwing the football. So you need some work on the interior of this line to give him some more passing lanes. Because when you had kind of the C's part for him, and he's able to just rip it, the dude's got an arm. And he is a quality quarterback. So it's the NFL. You're not just going to have the C's open up 50 times a game. But you do need a little bit more strength on the interior of that O-line. They're going to be drafting 19. There could be something there. That might be more a day 2 or a day 3 thing. The other thing I think they do need to improve on is the pass rush. It got better from the previous season to this one, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I think that's probably where they address things in the draft at 19 on day 1 is someone that can get to the quarterback. Interior of the offensive line, that is something I think you can address in free agency. So they're in a decent spot. They would be an interesting Kyle Pitts team for me. Maybe you want something a little bit more reliable than that, but an interesting spot for Carolina. And one that I think they could be a legitimate playoff team come this time next season. The Green Bay Packers, up next. They will not be drafting in the first round unless they make another move, as that pick was traded to the Dallas Cowboys. They come into this offseason with negative $37 million in salary cap space. This team was a Super Bowl contender for a reason, but again, this team is eliminated now for a reason. And so there aren't a whole lot of places where it's like, oh my God, fix this right now. But there are also, again, aren't a lot of spots where it's no. We're good. We're set. We're all checked here. Quarterback, you're fine with Love. The receiving room, that's the biggest need for me, is decisions at receiver and on the offensive line. They have a decision to make as Dobbs is a free agent. Let's focus on the receiving room for a second. It's been great that they have all this talent because everyone gets hurt on this team, but they have all this talent at wide receiver, but you kind of need a guy. You need that. We've seen with Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, all those spots. When it comes down to it, you need that guy. And Jacob said it going into last offseason that they kind of needed a number 1. I still think Christian Watson can be that if my guy can stay healthy at all. Golden had a very big playoff game, and it's big enough that I would almost prefer you just let Dobbs walk. I know he's probably the more reliable of the big 4 they have at receiver, but I feel like you kind of got to let him walk, let Golden develop, and kind of let that group do what it does. So I think they need a little bit of clarity there, and they need to figure out what the offensive line situation is, as Rasheed Walker, their left tackle, is a pending free agent. As we said, they don't got a ton of cap space to be able to try to keep him with. It's the NFL. You can juggle that around as much as you want. But do they keep him around, or is that something they address in the draft or in free agency? But that is going to be a very big spot for them, I think, is figuring out what they're going to do on the offensive line and specifically at left tackle. In terms of ways to just improve the roster they have now, I think you did see in that game against the Bears and throughout the season, there's some secondary help that is needed. It was great at the beginning of the year when Micah Parsons is breaking through, getting to the quarterback, making some of those big plays. Your secondary, it's a little bit easier when there is a pass rush that is relentless and they only have to cover for 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. But when that pass rush isn't getting home, this defense was getting picked apart a little bit. So I do think they need a little bit of help there in the secondary. Probably because of the move they made to bring Parsons in, they probably do need some help on the interior of the defensive line as well and getting in the run-stopping department. But this team is a couple of tweaks away from being right back there and playing this weekend instead of figuring out what is next for their organization. The Jacksonville Jaguars are up next. Again, a team that will not be picking in the first round unless other moves are made, as they traded that pick to the Cleveland Browns. They have negative $10.1 million in salary cap space. My number one need for them, and it's not going to be one that I think is addressed, is a true number one wide receiver. This receiving room is actually pretty talented with the acquisition of Jakobi Meyers. Washington showed that he can be a pretty solid pickup as well. Travis Hunter was just kind of getting going before he got hurt. And Brian Thomas would be the one that you would slot in as that true number one wide receiver, except he didn't look like it at any point this season. So he either needs to step up and be that guy now consistently, or they need to clear him out and bring in someone who can. And like Jakobi Meyers, I have never liked him as much as everyone else likes him. I think he's a really, really good number two, but I don't think he is that number one guy that is going to go out and beat teams in a competitive AFC. Hunter, again, could end up being that. Thomas has the talent to, but it seems like there is some frustration going on there. So they need one of those guys to figure it out. Hunter is staying. Meyers just signed that contract. If anyone's moving on, it's probably Thomas. So we'll see what they end up doing there. But again, like this was a talented football team this year. There's a reason why a lot of people picked them against Buffalo in that AFC wildcard game, and it came down to a very well executed tush push that gets the Bills into the next round. Looking at the stats, I was like, this team's kind of set. But you look at the stats, they're still middle of the pack in a lot of the secondary offensive categories that I look at that I feel like are pretty important to success. So that's why I was looking for a receiver for this team, because it feels like there is still a touch of an improvement that can happen with the pass catching unit with Jacksonville. Defensively, maybe some help on the interior of the defensive line. You have a really good pass rush with those guys and just a really solid team in general. Maybe a little bit more help in the run-stopping department could really round out this defense. But again, Jacksonville, for the first time in a really long time, is looking at an offseason where it's just kind of tinkering around the edges to try to find some subtle improvements to raise that ceiling a little bit higher instead of oh my God, what are we going to do with this football team? So a pretty good spot for Jacksonville to be heading into the offseason in. The Philadelphia Eagles are next. They already made one of their big moves of the offseason, firing their offensive coordinator. They have negative $1.1 million in cap space. Obviously, like, they have a lot of decisions that need to be made. But when you look at this Eagles team, the reason why there's so much frustration around how this season went is because this is a good football team. So honestly, better offensive play calling, and I think you're in a really, really good spot going forward. The A.J. Brown situation, that needs to get sorted. That can't be a distraction again, because you could feel it this year. I said before, they felt like they were going into games either trying to prove people wrong or to make A.J. Brown happy, much to the detriment of their football team. So either he needs to get on the same page as everyone else, or he needs to get gone. I said before, I meant to make this reference on the show, but didn't quite get to it. He feels like a Raider, right? Like, that feels like an old school, what Al Davis would do. Like, oh, you have a disgruntled number one wide receiver? We're bringing him in because Jamarcus Russell's a good quarterback. and Lane Kiffin's a good coach. That feels like a move that the Raiders of the past would end up doing. And look, that'd be a pretty good receiver for what we presume to be a number one pick at quarterback, although we'll talk about that later on in the stream. But they need to get that part figured out. The other thing that needs to get solved here is depth on the offensive line. Lane Johnson, there's a lot of will he, won't he in terms of coming back. Even if he does, you don't want to be going into next season with that. They did a pretty good job of backfilling behind Kelsey, and they've been able to replace a lot of guys on the offensive line that have moved on, like guys like Becton and all of that. They're going to need another one now, and it's tough to just draft a Lane Johnson replacement, but you kind of need to. There is going to need to be something backfilled there to get some depth because they were finally not fully healthy on the O-line, and that really did set some things back for them this year. They're drafting at 23. There could be some offensive line help that is there as well. They do have decisions to make. Some pretty big pieces are going to be free agents. Nakobe Dean, Jalen Phillips, and Reed Blankenship. Blankenship really struggled in the game against San Francisco. Dean is so solid and would be one of the best defensive players on most teams in the NFL. Kind of same with Phillips. They have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. They've drafted there really well. And quite frankly, if a couple of pieces leave and you maybe have a couple of holes, every team does, they're not going to be understanding about that. But I wonder if all of those end up leaving. Dean would be the one that I would focus on trying to bring back the most. Blankenship, that was a rough go, and maybe you try to find a replacement there. Phillips, I think is solid, but Dean feels like one you really don't want to let go. And that would be a huge player to add to a number of different teams. So they have decisions to make there, and then maybe a little bit of help in the secondary, especially if Blankenship is on his way out. But again, a pretty good group of corners. It's just, again, it's a really good roster. It's a really good roster. You're just either filling in for a couple of guys who might be leaving or adding some depth to protect against injuries. But better play calling, better vibes, weird is it to say, but better vibes, and better results for the Eagles in 2026. Because again, the roster is silly good in Philly. The LA Chargers are next. One of the first teams that we're going to talk about with real cap space, as they have $94 million to spend. They'll be drafting 22nd overall in the draft, or at least that's the pick they hold right now. They're another one that you watch how the season plays out, and it's like, okay, well, the need is obvious, and it's the offensive line. But if all the offensive linemen are healthy, they're set. Right? Like if Alt and Slater are good, this is a pretty solid offensive line that they have going for them. So I don't think you need to trade up in the draft to try to get the best offensive lineman or the best tackle or anything. But some depth wouldn't be the worst thing, even though like it was a lot of injuries, but you could see that some of those depth pieces weren't it. So let's see if we can get some guys who could be. I do think there's genuine need to help out on the interior of the offensive line. Like that is a part that just needs to be upgraded. And then defensively on the D-line, getting a little old and not being able to get to the quarterback as often as maybe they would like. So that is an area that I think they could get a little bit more athletic in and a little bit more talented in on the defensive line. So some trenches stuff is on the wish list for the LA Chargers heading into this offseason. And then the most discussed team over the last week or so, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. $29.9 million in salary cap space. They need a coach, and they need a lot of help. This was one of the things we talked about when discussing the Tomlin firing. This is not a great roster. And it feels like Tomlin is being punished for dragging subpar rosters into the postseason and then having predictable results with them. They need a quarterback. I think you need another wide receiver. This offense was very limited when DK Metcalf went out and shoved a fan in the last 2 days, or last two games of the regular season there. And they need help on the defense. That secondary is good. That's a good secondary that they have. But TJ Watt can't be the only one who's getting after the passer on a consistent basis. They need some help in the front seven. So quarterback, you're right around where Simpson is on big boards, but I don't know if he's going to be available at quarterback for them there. Wide receiver, you can probably find something at that part, and then defense, that this team has generally been okay about finding some defensive players, but they haven't been great over the last couple of seasons. So this is like $29.9 million. They're going to be able to do some stuff, but they have done so much of just trying to plug the holes, and those are starting to break as well. It feels like a bigger reset is probably needed in Pittsburgh, but they haven't done that the entire time I've been alive. So I don't know if that's going to be the way they do it. I'm very, very intrigued to see how Pittsburgh attacks this offseason. So what did you guys think? Is there an obvious need that I have missed? Is there something that I'm overstating with what these teams are looking for? Let me know either in the comments or in the chat if you are watching this live, and we can keep that football conversation going. We are streaming this on a few different platforms over on YouTube, Kick, and on twitch.tv/primetimepk. Right now we got the discount on gifted subs, 35% off 5 gifted subs. Right now that is going to Sunday morning. So check that one out if you are heading over to twitch.tv/primetimepk. The next stream that we're going to be doing, unless Kyle Tucker signs after the stream today, but the next one that is scheduled is going to be 10 a.m. Mountain Time on Friday. So a rare Friday stream from me on Twitch, Kick, and over on YouTube. Some big news coming from the draft over the last 24 hours, and I think it locks in what the strategy needs to be for the team at the top of the draft. The Raiders, I think your decision now is very clear. I think you got to trade that thing. Let's talk about why. Look, the Vegas Raiders have an obvious need at quarterback. They also have the number 1 overall pick. Most teams in that spot draft a quarterback. And there is one this year in Mendoza who is probably a couple of days away from winning a national championship against the Miami Hurricanes and is the consensus number 1 overall pick. And so again, that math usually leads to the team that has the first overall pick that needs the quarterback picking the quarterback. And while I don't think that would be a mistake, I think it would be like in college when you get the multiple choice, and it's not pick the right answer, it's pick the most correct answer. The Raiders have shown in the past that even at number 1 overall, there is a wrong answer, right? Even at times where it's like, oh, there's no really wrong answer. No. There's a wrong answer here. The Raiders found it with Jamarcus Russell. They found it high up in the draft with Darius Hayward-Bay and a number of other, Robert Gallery. The list goes on and on early in the draft times. And even recently, they haven't really hit on a ton. Cleveland Farrell, really high. All of those things, right? So the Raiders have shown there is a wrong answer, but there are 2 right ones. I just think one is significantly more right and is becoming more obvious. I think you have to trade this pick. With the reason why, I guess the reason for all this is Dante Moore announcing he's going to stay in college for another season. Didn't like how it ended, getting just absolutely whooped on by the Indiana Hoosiers in the national semifinal game. So he is now looking to improve that stock and become the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft next season, which means that after Mendoza, there is a significant gap between quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 in this draft. There's a website that looks at the consensus of all the mock drafts and kind of slot and all the big boards and kind of slots the players in where that consensus is. Right now, like Mendoza is around like a top 4 prospect in this draft. Maybe not necessarily 1, but a top 4 prospect in this draft. Simpson's around 20. Ty Simpson, the quarterback for Alabama. So the teams at the top of the draft, like the Jets were in a good spot because like, okay, Mendoza, whatever, Moore, we got him. Lock it in. We got our quarterback and we're good. Arizona kind of left on the outside, holding the bag a little bit, but they have a few needs that they need to address as well. But now the Jets need a quarterback. They're right behind the Raiders with 2 picks in the first round, by the way. Arizona needs a quarterback, probably. They are right behind the Raiders as well. Vegas now has the obvious best thing in this draft. And I get saying, oh, the number 1 pick is the best asset in this draft. Yeah, no shit. But this isn't the downside of it for Vegas is that this isn't a couple of years ago where there were a ton of teams that needed quarterbacks. A lot of teams at least feel like they got their guy. Miami maybe wants a different shot at it, but they're maybe a bit too far down unless you're going to get an absolute haul from them. But in terms of teams at the top, there aren't as many as there have been in the past. But because there is such a gap between number 1 and number 2 at quarterback here, I think the Raiders are holding a golden ticket to be able to change their franchise because they're not a quarterback away. They are almost an entire starting unit away from being a good football team, right? Like there are very few positions on the football field that as a Raider fan, I feel confident in the group on, right? Like obviously I like Crosby. Obviously I like Bowers and Genty. And there are probably a couple of other pieces, but those are the main ones, obviously. But there's a lot that this team needs to fix. And so to me, when you see how the Bears were able to turn things around after trading the Bryce Young pick, go on further down with when the Rams were able to get all of those pieces in the RG3 trade. Like there are a number of examples of these trades really working out for the team that makes it. And now when there is an obvious number 1 and number 2 is obviously number 2, it feels like the Raiders are in an excellent spot to be able to capitalize on this situation, fill out the roster in a way that is actually productive, and then look, they can go out, nail it in this draft, get a number of picks, and just crush it, and go into next season and still have one of the worst rosters in the league. Like they can check every box in free agency, in the draft. They could go 10 for 10 on picks. They could get every free agent that you could possibly want, and this would still be easily the worst team in their division and one of the worst in football. That's how bad this roster is right now. So you're still going to be in a spot a year from now to be able to pick that dude anyway, in Dante Moore. So to me, the choice is clear. Vegas, if they want to really turn this ship around, finally, for the first time in like 25 years, it feels like, this is the time, this is the move that they can make. Again, Mendoza probably isn't the wrong one. We have seen, and I have been a proponent of make sure that foundation is set before we're trading away a guy, or before we're bringing in a number 1 overall pick at quarterback, so we're not just throwing him to the wolves and ruining him. But we have seen that, okay, let's just get the quarterback in the building. Let's see what we have, and we can still branch around it after. Like the Giants are still going to be able to add some offensive line help this offseason. They're still going to be able to add maybe another weapon or two for Jackson Dart. You just have to make sure you don't kill the kid in the process and kill the confidence in the first year. Mendoza has a unique personality to be a Vegas quarterback, B, a Raider quarterback. So if you bring him in and it's not the ideal situation, I think there's pretty thick skin there. I think he's going to be fine and be able to handle that. You might ruin a year of development there, but I think he's going to be okay. You just want to make sure that you can then nail it the next year. So Mendoza isn't an awful pick. It's not Jamarcus Russell or anything like that. But I think the Raiders have a much clearer path to building a sustainable, I was going to say winner, just a sustainable, competent team in the National Football League if that pick is moved. Are you team trade or are you team stick and pick with the Raiders? Let me know in the comments, or if you're watching live, let me know in the chat, and certainly open to debating this. Hey, we stream this live every time on Twitch, YouTube, and Kick. But if you missed any of it, or you just want to bring Couch Potato Diary with you wherever you go, you can check it out in podcast form over on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So that is the story from the National Football League. We are probably going to break today's stream up into multiple episodes. So for podcast listeners, this is going to be the end of part 1. Part 2, going to do a lot of talk on Major League Baseball, a little pro wrestling as well. And then Living Room Lariat is a wrestling exclusive podcast that I have through Spotify. It's available everywhere, but Spotify is kind of the preferred choice for me. It's where you can watch the videos for it as well. On there, we're going to have a little bit of extra bonus content for the wrestling side. So there's a lot more of the talk to come for those listening in podcast form. So for those watching on the stream, we're going to continue here in just a sec. For those listening, you're going to have to get the baseball talk coming up here in part number 2. And we're back. Part 2 of the podcast, going to be talking some baseball here and a little bit of wrestling on Couch Potato Diary. As always, we're available on, or we're presented by Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca and get that great Calgary swag. I mean, again, even if you're not from Calgary, I mean, we only really have local delivery right now, but even if you don't know, like, that's a Cannon's hat, we're celebrating Calgary here. It's objectively, it's a cool hat. So it's National Hat Day. But just get it. It looks great. You can rock with that one over at seaofdead403.ca. Before we get into the baseball talk, more from YouTube. Connor D 10001. Are we just making up multiple accounts now, Connor D? I feel like we didn't have the numbers in there last time we were chatting. But either way, would you be more stoked if a party you went to had a DQ Blizzard cake or a regular cake? A regular DQ cake, I mean. I am always pro Blizzard cake. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. Like that is that easy layup is the Blizzard cake. Not that like regular cakes, they're fine. They're great. But I do find that almost every time I'm rolling with it, if I have a regular cake, there is a part of me that is like, man, kind of wish it was an ice cream cake. Like we have the ability, we have the technology to make ice cream cakes. Why are we making other cakes? Cheesecake is an exception, but why we not putting ice cream in cakes when we can put ice cream in cakes? You know, like we get the ice cream, put it on top of the cake. Why don't we just in the so yes, 100% more stoked if we're rocking with an ice cream cake over a regular cake. Not that regular cakes are bad. This is just, you know, it's an ice cream cake. It's perfect. It's what you're looking for. So yeah, ice cream cake, 100% the way to go. More cake related questions. We have people asking about the morning show over on YouTube as well. So yeah, fire away. Whatever you guys want to chat about. If I'm in the middle of something, I'll probably finish that topic and then we'll get to what you're going on about. But yeah, whatever you guys want to talk about, fire it away in the chat. But part 2 of the podcast is focusing on Major League Baseball. Like I said, we got some baseball talk and a little bit of wrestling coming in as well, with a lot more wrestling going to be over on Living Room Lariat. If you're listening in podcast form or you're just tuning into the live stream, already a lot of football talk. If you're watching live, that's going to be out much a little bit later on today. And much love, Connor. I appreciate you popping in, and I love the off the beaten path questions that you always throw my way. So you know what, makes me think. Got to get the brain going a little bit on a Thursday. So hopefully we do have some more baseball to talk about as the show goes on. As again, I got the phone sitting here. I've had a lot of notifications come up, because it turns out, I always find this when I'm waiting for breaking news, I have notifications on too many people, because I've had a lot of things that's like, oh no, it's a podcast alert. Never mind. So we're still waiting on the Kyle Tucker news. If that breaks, obviously we're going to talk about it. If it breaks after the show is done and I'm still around, then I'm going to sprint back into the office here. Hopefully not knock over the Pikachu and the Sumo behind me and jump on and start breaking down Kyle Tucker to the Blue Jays, Mets, Dodgers, or Pittsburgh Pirates, and we'll have a time. But for now, we still have some other moves to talk about. Alex Bregman is a Chicago Cub, which was not something anyone thought we would be saying right up until that news broke. So let's go over what this means for the Cubs, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, as one of the big names in free agency finally came off the board. Alex Bregman signs a 5-year deal with the Chicago Cubs for $175 million. I am of a couple of minds on this one. That is longer and more expensive than I would feel comfortable with in signing Alex Bregman. And it's a contract the Red Sox should have absolutely done. And you hear Przinsky talking about it on, I think, Foul Territory. That's the podcast he does. You hear him talking about it and how the Red Sox played it. And it feels like Boston played this all wrong. Like they have a lot of trust they need to build back with their fan base, and losing out like this isn't going to help. And the Red Sox fan at this point doesn't want to hear that, oh, well, the contract was a little bit too long. We just didn't want to spend that amount of money, because they have moved on from Bogarts, which worked out, from Betts, which didn't work out, and from Devers, TBA. I guess TBD on that one. They've moved on from all those guys in the name of financial flexibility. And the reason that you get flexible financially is so that when big names that are proven to work in your ballpark, and maybe more specifically in your clubhouse, when they come available, you want to be able to spend a little bit more on those guys. So I can understand the Red Sox fan being very frustrated by this. Now, Boston was able to bounce back, and we'll talk about Suarez in a second. But for me, this is it is a player that I worry about how it's going to age. I don't know if I would have given that term or dollar amount to the player, but this is where I have a bit of a difficult time with baseball, because there is no salary cap. And understanding not every team can spend $500 million. So at some point, these contracts have to matter. But the difference between paying Bregman $35 million a year and like 28 that I would have wanted to, it doesn't matter, because it's baseball, and all of these franchises are worth $1 billion. And only, 9 of the teams spent 50% of their revenue on salary in the last season. So they got wiggle room. You can make these contracts worth. And so to me, the money is a little bit fake. There is obviously a limit to it, though. And I guess Boston felt like they got to that limit. But I feel like for a contending team, even though it's more than I would want, it's still one that I think you should do because of what the player is right now. And for Boston specifically, again, the swing perfect for Fenway Park. Defensively, is it going to fall off at some point? Maybe, I don't know. But I feel like there is going to be a slight regression. But this is a pretty solid Red Sox team that I think needs to be worrying about the now a little bit more than they have been. And Bregman, when you have a number of kids coming up through your organization, and you want to show them what winners do, how to act in the clubhouse, and how to handle the pressures. Bregman has had to handle all of it, right? Coming up as a top prospect. Not that Houston is a crazed media market, but it's not a small market team by any stretch of the imagination. National spotlight, winning world championships, even bigger national spotlight because of the scandal that his team was involved in. I'm not going to say it was actually a positive from that, but he has had some unique experiences in Major League Baseball, and to still come out of it as someone that a lot of people respect in clubhouses is pretty impressive. And I think it shows that the kind of dude that we're dealing with here, and that's the kind of dude you want in your locker room. So a tough one here for the Red Sox, and one that I think is going to be a little bit difficult for them to kind of overcome. Again, it's what you kind of needed to do with Devers leaving and bringing this guy in. You've made the choice, him over Devers. Now you got neither of them. And so, again, it's a fine roster. Gray, good. It's a solid pitching staff with Crochet at the top. We'll see what some of the other younger arms develop into. And Gray, solid. Contreras adds to a solid lineup, right? But you're asking Anthony to be an MVP candidate, no questions asked. You're asking for best case scenario out of Trevor Story. You're asking for Duran to be best case scenario again. You're relying on a lot of best case scenario from this team, and Bregman would have just provided much more of a safety blanket and taken a lot of pressure off of some young, still developing players in that lineup. Again, they recovered with Suarez, and we'll get into that a little bit more depth here in a second, but this is a tough one for the Red Sox. As far as the Cubs are concerned, let's talk about the team that actually signed him. I like this move for them a lot. They made a win-now move in trading for Cabrera. You move one of your top, not even one of you move your top prospect to the Marlins to bring Cabrera in as kind of that ace that you're looking for, a 1-2 with Senga, and lock in a solid starting rotation. That signifies that you're all in. So now you have to go out and make all-in moves. Tucker, it just wasn't working. Some talk about the clubhouse not necessarily clicking. Some talk about just overall play, whatever. The dollar range was going to be maybe a bit out of their price target, although with Bregman, that proves to be incorrect. But you need to bring something in. And so Bregman, it fills a need absolutely for this team over at third base. It adds a little bit more contact to this group. He has good power numbers, but he gets on base, good batting average, all of those things. They need to get the batting average on. They need to get some guys on base. They got a ton of pop throughout this lineup, but they have a whole lot of like 240 in the batting average category. They needed someone like a Bregman to kind of elevate that a little bit more, be able to get on base for a lot of the power hitters that they have up and down this lineup. I still think a lot of this hinges on if PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, turns into that all-star again, and can consistently be a high-level player instead of some of the regression that we have seen at different times from him. But if he can kind of be a bit more consistent in that lineup, then this is probably the best lineup in the National League Central that just got a little worse with Arenado getting sent to Arizona. Pitching staff is solid. This is a good baseball team out in Chicago, and one that I think should be extremely competitive for a division crown here this year. They're the only team in the division doing anything positive, right? Like, the Reds have been in on some guys. The Cardinals are moving on from Arenado, and the Brewers, they haven't done anything really this offseason except for try to fight off Peralta rumors at every turn. So the Cubs are the only one now. All of a sudden, they go from losing their best player to making a couple of moves, and now we're competitive again in the Central. And I'm not going to say it's a clear path to a division win because the Brewers are still there, but it has to feel very, very good for Chicago at this particular time with what they are looking to build right now. So to me, the Cubs are the favorite in the Central. And even though I don't like the contract, I like the player fit for a team that is a big market team, that is a marquee franchise, that has a ton of money to be able to spend anyway. So if you have to overspend to bring in guys like this, you just have to do it. Because if you stick with the metrics, stick with your system, that's a really great way of coming in second place a lot in some of these free agents. And that's where the Red Sox are at right now. What about you guys? It does feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I don't love the contract. Love the player, though. Need to sign that guy. Where are you? Win, loss for the Cubs and for the Red Sox. Let me know in the chat or in the comment section down below if you are watching this after the fact. If you're listening to this after the fact, again, Couch Potato Diary available in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts, and you still want to be a part of the conversation, you can get at me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and over on Blue Sky, so we can keep the conversations going there, and plus you can get updated on everything going on with the show and everything just going on with me in general. All right, we have another one here from YouTube. 2 other radio questions, all good if you don't want to touch on these. Why does Wedley in Bridlewood get every one of his texts read, and why is a journalist taking work from broadcasting professionals? So the Wedley in Bridlewood one, honestly, like he texts a lot, and so I'm sure there have been times where he hasn't had his texts read, but there is a volume there, and so it feels like he does because a lot of them do get read. And like he is kind of established, like he has some fun with us. We know when we see that name and number pop up that, okay, this is probably going to be all right. So we can kind of go into it blind sometimes because at least the way I have it, you just get a bit of a preview of it and then you click into it and you see a little bit more of it. And there are sometimes you get the preview of it and then it's like, oh, well, hey, really big fan of the show, guys, except for this, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well, gonna have to double check that one next time. But with Wedley and with a lot of other ones as well, that there are, like you kind of have a trust that is built up there. So part of it's volume, part of it is just the quality of the texts over a long period of time as well. So there's hopefully there's that. And in terms of a journalist taking work from broadcasting professionals, I don't view it in that way personally. I don't know who you're referring to necessarily. I probably have a couple of guesses, but even with that, like, I have kind of gone the other way, right? Not that I promise, I will never consider myself a journalist, not even that, but I have gone from the spoken word medium into writing a little bit, right? Like I did some work for Daily Hive for a couple of years there. I've been at 3 Down for a little bit. Like I have gone from the talking aspect of it into the writing aspect of it as well. Okay, Connor, I know what you're talking about now. And so, like, to me, we are at a time where the two worlds are kind of meshing as one, right? Like there was a time where the journalist, the reporter on the beat was out there and getting every scoop and the voice that was there. Now you have a lot of different ones, right? We have national insider types. We have like the radio people, like Steinberg is as about as insidery with the Flames as you can possibly get, and he's a radio dude doing journalist type things, right? So the lines are kind of blurred a little bit. You have the journalists who are following the teams still, watching every game, and part of what they do is crafting opinions for it and typing them out in ways that are, pleasant to read and have to be entertaining. And so that is kind of what we're doing with radio anyway. It's just we're saying it and not typing it. So to me, I don't have any problem with anyone from the newspaper side or anything venturing into the radio space and putting things on there, because I feel like that the two are pretty blurred at this time. There are some times where like I still... And look, I talk on these things with some level of authority at times, but when we're on like national broadcasts and stuff, and you get a little bit more on the reportery side, and it's still talking about X's and O's and everything like that. Like we watch all these games, we break them down. There is a certain level of it that we can talk about even more eloquently than some players can, right? Like you listen to some players talk, and it's like, boy, it's a good thing you were big, because there wasn't a whole lot going on up there, and so like I feel like, for me personally, I can explain a lot of X's and O's things and a lot of what I'm seeing in a way that at least some people find entertaining. So that gives me a slight edge there. But if we're talking about, well, in that locker room, over other players, that's where we kind of lose it. So I feel like a lot of those lines have kind of been blurred anyway. But with the ones that are on the radio, specifically in Calgary, they're around the team all the time. They have that knowledge base around the product. They're watching every game, so they know what they're seeing. They know they're breaking it all down, and they have, again, just a strong knowledge of it. And based on the profession that they have chosen, they know how to articulate that in unique ways. So it gets different perspectives out there. It gets just some more intellectual talk out there. Not that the non-journalists aren't, but it's more smart talk, less hot takey stuff that can be out there, which I think is a good thing as well. So I don't have much of a problem with it. I don't I don't view it as something like saying there. I don't view it as something that is like a double dip or getting in the way of jobs or anything like that. Like for new people coming in, I will agree there's not enough new opportunities out there in kind of higher level spots. Like you have stuff like I'm doing, right? Like you have, anyone can get a microphone, a camera, and put stuff out on the internet, right? We've seen that. Anyone can do those sorts of things. So you can get a certain level of experience there. It's the middle part that I think we're missing. It's going from new out of school, come in, we're on talk shows, we're doing this. All of a sudden now it's the morning show and it's the afternoon show and whatever. So like to me, the new people aren't coming in and taking a spot in drive time anyway. The problem is we don't have any shows that are developing these kids now at all, right? Like when I was coming up, I now had to fight for it a lot and got paid in experience for most of these things, but did the baseball show with Will, did the combat sports show with G, and then second sometimes by myself as well. Did the fantasy football show with both of those guys. Like there was a lot of different shows that we did that let us kind of cut our teeth in these areas and kind of refined a few things. And there's still like I thought I was more ready for the morning show thing than I was, and turned out at least they felt I wasn't. And still I there's a lot more that I needed to kind of round out in what I was doing before I went in there. And a lot of that was just upstairs a little bit, but that's another story for another time. But in terms of like the broadcast presentation and being ready and knowing how to put your thoughts together and put them together in an entertaining informational sort of a way, and a way that kind of makes sense, and also how to handle text line and different conversations and people talking in your ear and timing and all of those sorts of things. There aren't those, like those were great spots for for me to learn and for me to develop and for me to kind of grow into those areas. And there's not enough of those right now. So you either are just kind of thrown into the deep waters, or you do have to go out and find other people to try to get ready. So honestly, like personally, and I love that I have the opportunities going over there. If I were a young broadcaster coming up, I'd be mad at the me's of the world who, look, old dude, you got Grays coming in now. Let's move it aside. It's time for other people to get the opportunities that I'm getting instead of me. Now, I greatly appreciate that I get them and still think that I have a lot to offer and everything like that. But if I was me of 10 years ago and they were bringing in a guy who they had already laid off to host some of these shows that I'm hosting, I would very much have a problem with that and be frustrated by it. So I don't love that. I don't love a lot of the national stuff. And I get, like, for listeners, that's good. But for the development of different programs and everything like that, there should be an evening show every night. The weekends should be jam-packed with local shit all the way to let a lot of these people kind of hone their skills and everything like that. So, I wasn't expecting the radio conversation today, but you can fire away any questions that you want. Toxic, did you ever go to school for radio? I know it doesn't sound like it, but yes. I was at Mount Royal for a year and a half. It's now a 4-year program. It was a 2-year program when I went. I didn't finish though. For me, it was 1 year of radio and then 1 year of television. And they would tell you, like, if you just want to do radio and you want to bounce, you can. We're not teaching anything else here. You're not going to get a nice little paper, but you can get out of here. And so I did the 1 year of radio. I was half a semester into television. And then we had a scholarship with TSN, and I got that. So it was late enough that I hadn't heard anything back from TSN that I assumed I wasn't getting it. So I had structured my they're not objectives. What is it? The non-broadcasting courses, electives. That's it. You needed X amount of electives to graduate. I didn't think I was going to be bothered by going to Toronto, so I had kind of figured I would just spread them out a little bit. And then literally to the day, a month before it was time for me to move to Toronto, I got the message that I got the scholarship. And so it was an internship at TSN, heading out there. And so I finished up all the broadcasting stuff that I needed to, but I didn't get the electives that I needed to graduate. So I am technically a dropout of Mount Royal College. But yes, I went there for a year and a half and then worked at TSN for 2 years and then came back here to Calgary. And that's where we're at now. With no real news in between. Nothing really happened between now and then. So yes, I went to school there for broadcasting. And if anyone is looking at getting into broadcasting, I cannot recommend the staff at Mount Royal enough. Just like high level technology they have there, elite level teaching, and you get a lot of great experience, and it's a good reputation throughout the broadcasting world, at least I've found anyway, going forward. So you can keep the radio questions coming. Again, wasn't expecting to get that in depth on some of the radio stuff here today, but it's a lot of fun. So enjoying some of these conversations. Up next, we're going to keep the baseball talk going. The Red Sox may have missed out on Alex Bregman, but they have filled out their starting staff with a very good move, bringing in Ranger Suarez. So where does this put the Red Sox right now in the American League East? Let's talk about it. Okay. I understand he's got a job to do, and he's got a lot of things going on, and you want to promote this, that, and the other thing. Ken Rosenthal, I'm begging you, we got to stop reposting stuff right now, man, because I got the notification set, and every time I see, because right now I have my phone, the iPhone on the standby mode, so it's on its side. I have the clock looking at me, and so I don't see what he's posting right away. I just get the notification on my phone, Ken Rosenthal reposted. So I just stare at it. And it's an Andy McCullough conversation with Clayton Kershaw, which I'm sure is very entertaining. Andy McCullough, one of the best in the business, both podcasting and writing, and has a book on Clayton Kershaw, so that would probably be a very good conversation. But not what we're looking to talk about today. Waiting on the Kyle Tucker news. But while we wait on that, and while the baseball world waits on that, the Red Sox finally getting a little busy. They had a good start to the offseason, bringing in Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras. Now, they've added to it, bringing in Suarez for 5 years at $130 million. And this is a really smart move, I think, for the Red Sox. And that bugs me because I like being able to make fun of the Red Sox a little bit for ineptitude in the front office, right? And we just did the Bregman conversation. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, check out that video after. But yeah, we just finished the Bregman conversation about how frustrating it is that the Red Sox aren't spending, and then they go out and make a very reasonable move and bring in Suarez. And now it's like, man, it's more fun when you get to make fun of those guys. But this is a good move for them. Like, Suarez coming in to kind of round out that pitching rotation in Boston, I think really does work for the Red Sox. I just want to pull it up here for me. So yeah, like right now you have Crochet as the number one. That's obvious. Like I didn't do awards votes this year. Just based on how the season ended, he was my Cy Young. Like I get Skubal, best pitcher in the American League. These are two different things. Skubal down the stretch, I felt like was kind of, not entirely, it wasn't all his fault, but there was a little bit where he was contributing to the fall of the Tigers late in the season that allowed the Guardians to host that playoff series, while Crochet was coming up with some monster performances in the biggest games of the season for them. And so you have that ace at the top. Suarez, I was worried about what he was going to get on the market, because he's coming off of a good season, pitched 157 innings, 8.64 K to 9, and a 320 earn run average. So like the dude is good. He is solid. But I was worried that coming off of that, we're going to be looking at some number one type of money here. The market didn't play out that way. It's a good contract for a team like the Red Sox to be paying their number two right now. And they are just going with a pretty solid rotation now with Crochet at the one. Suarez can be your number two. Gray is a fine number three and an even better number four if Buehrle continues to progress into the type of pitcher that it looks like he could get to. Like if you get the kid to reach his ceiling, then Gray is totally fine as a number four. And then they have like Oviedo or any number of young players or whoever that they want to bring in as a starter for next season. That's a really solid pitching rotation. And when you look at what you're dealing with in the American League East, the Yankees, they got it at the top with Cole, although we'll see coming off of the injury. But with Cole, with Schlittler, and with Rodon, that's a solid 1, 2, 3. I have real worries, about the consistency and the health of Rodon. Oh, they have Fried as well. Sorry. Just casually forgot their most important pitcher last season. But the last image I have of him is him looking very upset when Vlad Guerrero Jr. is nuking grand slams and he's sitting on the bench. I had to get that shot in. It's a Red Sox segment, so I feel like you guys are fine. We're free of a lot of Yankee people anyway. But you look at they have a really good 1-2 at the top when they're healthy. And then Schlittler has turned into a thing. Like this guy is going to be quite good. And then after that, like Rodon, I have some concerns, but if he's your number four, that's okay. The Orioles, they brought in Eflin. There's just not a lot there. Same with Tampa Bay. The Blue Jays, I still think have the best staff in baseball, and obviously there's a bias there, but best staff in the American League. Because best staff in baseball is still the Dodgers. But when you look at like Gausman, Cease, you savage what he was able to do. Bieber coming in, and then if it is Barrios as your five, if Scherzer does come back, if Bowden Francis, whatever, like they have 1 through 5, they probably have the best unit. This one's close now with Crochet. Crochet's a better pitcher than anyone the Blue Jays have. But then like ahead of Suarez, I would probably put Gausman and Bieber for sure. And if Savage can keep up that, Savage can keep up what he did in the postseason into the regular season, then yeah, like he's going to be probably better than that as well. But it's still a really, really solid group for the Red Sox. And it's a solid team. And I think that's where Red Sox fans get frustrated with the Bregman situation, is that like you have a team that is close. You have like Roman Anthony at the top, gonna need to keep progressing, but like already the kid looks like he is going to be an absolute star and certainly has that potential, even if it was only in 300 plate appearances in the big leagues this year. Trevor Story is solid, right? Kind of same with Duran. Like, they got solid. Contreras, solid. Narvaez as the catcher, solid, right? With Connor Wong back there as well. You have Yoshida on the bench, which is solid. Like, you have a solid group all the way. It feels like they are, honestly, a star away from being able to really come out and really contribute. And so now, when you lose out on Bregman and you're rocking with a Sogard-Meyer platoon right now at third base, that's a bit of a step back for a team that I don't know why they need to be going back from. So it's just like they have enough pieces there to build a very competitive championship level team. And they're just like that one big piece away, and they're the Red Sox, so they should be in on the Kyle Tucker's conversation, right? Like, I get like left field kind of gets in the way with Roman Anthony, but with you have Abreu out there right now, like 247 last year. I think you can manage that. Like, you can make that work to bring him in. They should be in on some of the other conversations. Like, Romy Gonzalez is okay, but Bo Bichette would be a whole lot better and be a bat that this lineup needs. Like, it feels like they've done a good job of getting those solid pieces in, but they need that one more star to get them over the hump. And that's just something they've been really bad at over the last, like, since Mookie left. Since trading away Mookie Betts, the whole star thing hasn't really clicked with the Red Sox. And that's something that, again, they're the Red Sox. They should be able to figure out. Toxic in the chat. We're talking Blue Jays now. Just one more reason for the Blue Jays to sign Kyle Tucker. Yes, like, the Blue Jays right now have had an excellent offseason, and there's no doubt. And yes, Cody Ponce as well. I forgot to mention him in the starting pitcher conversation. I still don't know where he factors into everything. But yes, the guy who struck out every batter he faced over in Korea last year, yeah, also going to be impactful, I think. But the Blue Jays have had a really good offseason, and they still have a really good team. If the season started today with the roster they have, they are absolutely a World Series contender again. But it's not a stone cold lock that they're just coming out of the AL East again. The Yankees, it's like, no, Bellinger will sting a little bit if he ends up going to the Mets. Or wherever he ends up going. They make a depth pitching move with the Marlins, but there hasn't been a whole lot of improvement there. Still a really dangerous team, though, right? Like, I do have a couple of issues with a couple of the players that they have, but you can still go Cole and Fried at the top of your rotation. You can still go Judge in the middle of your lineup. It's still a dangerous baseball team. And the Red Sox, we just talked about it, solid up and down the lineup with a very good pitching rotation. The Orioles have one of the scariest lineups in baseball. A pitching staff that your mileage may vary on, but they have one of the scariest lineups in baseball. This is a murderer's row division again. So for Toronto, absolutely, this drives home the fact that Kyle Tucker needs to be signed by the Blue Jays or Bichette. One of those two, they need one of those guys to kind of put them over the top here a little bit. But like, for now, like, the Red Sox getting in on Eugenio Suarez or something like that, or Bo Bichette, probably priced himself out, but that is the type of move that I think the Red Sox need to be making right now. That being said, yeah, Suarez is a fine addition to this starting rotation right now and makes it a very solid team going forward. But what do you guys think? Are you in agreement with me, I guess, on the Red Sox? Do we think that this team is a move away from contending, or do you think they already have a competitive roster? Let me know in the chat or in the comments if you are watching this after the fact. And if you are enjoying this and want to know when more is coming, hit that notification bell and you will get updates every time that we post stuff here with Couch Potato Diary. Again, all those things really do help growing the channel. Always a fun conversation, and wanted to kind of keep the baseball stuff going. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame debate is never a quiet one. And so I'm going to throw my ring into the hat and give you my Hall of Fame ballot based on the picks that are available. I got 3 guys that are making it, 1 that just missed. So let's take a look at who I would vote for in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Major League Baseball, and I guess the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame. Always a debate. Jeff Kent, one of the more recently voted in, but we know who all is on the ballot. We know who all can be voted in. So I thought I would give a whirl and throw out the players that I think should be voted into the Hall of Fame. I've made it very clear before that unless suspended, steroid era players are fine with me. And so that, I don't think that necessarily comes into play here, but I still just, I like to get that out there because I like to stir the people up a little bit. So first one on my ballot, this one's an easy one. It's Carlos Beltran. And I know that after the fact, he was involved in the Astros thing, and everything like that. But if he's going to be the scapegoat of it, then fine. But every other player has been allowed to play. AJ Hinch has been able to manage again. Everything else has been like, okay, this was the thing, so now we move on. I think you have to with Beltran as well. Like, maybe there does have to be a thing at the bottom, like, oh, and by the way, my guy was pretty integral in hitting on some garbage cans and helping teams win World Series. But if we ignore that, which I admit is a pretty big if, but he was an elite player in his time. From his run with the Royals, briefly with the Astros, and then the Mets, like, this was one of the top players in Major League Baseball in his prime, and like just true five tool, right? Could hit for power, could run, defend, all of the things that you needed him to do, he was able to do. And so, like, maybe he does get a bit of a knock because he wasn't on as many like World Series-y competitive teams and all of that, but still, one of the best players in baseball in his time, and I think the Hall of Fame would be a little incomplete without our guy, Carlos Beltran, in the Hall of Fame. Up next is Andruw Jones, and this one I went back and forth. Honestly, these next two, my initial thought, because the very first thing with a Hall of Fame ballot, for me, is that you have to say their name, and it's like, okay, Andruw Jones, does he feel like a Hall of Famer or not? If the answer is no, then it's a quick no. I don't need to see the stats. I don't need to see the this, that, and the other thing. It's just like, does this guy feel like he belongs in the Hall of Fame? If the answer is no, then it's a quick smell test and he's out. Andruw Jones, it was a maybe. And the next two I have maybes. But Andruw Jones is up next for me. One of the best defensive players in the history of the game. And, like, yeah, the offensive side was a little inconsistent at times. But when it was on, a very dangerous hitter. And he was at least good enough that he was a threat on the offensive end. And then his peaks as a defender are second to only a few in the history of the sport. Like, I think his glove was good enough that it gets him into the conversation anyway. And then you look at the successful teams he was on, part of some very, very good Atlanta Braves teams, and a really good bat at the top part of some lineups as well. He has all the different tools that put it together. So is there a bit of a name value thing that kind of goes out a little bit? Yeah, like I feel like I don't think about Andruw Jones a ton post his playing career, the same way you would with a Beltran or someone like that. But Andruw Jones still, I think, was impactful enough defensively and just had a bit there on the offensive side that gets him to a level where, yes, he deserves to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Last one here, and probably the more debatable, and honestly, there's probably some bias because of the jersey I'm wearing, but Mark Buehrle. This guy was as reliable gets, and most of his career you would put into Hall of Very Good, right? Like, I think that is probably where most people would have him, and so I can understand that because, like, he wasn't this dominant ace for a really long time. He spent a lot of his career just being that solid, reliable starter. But I do think people forget that this guy spends the back part of his career as just an innings eater. You can trust him every fifth day. You can trust him in playoff games. This is just a solid pitcher. When you have a back part of the career that's like that, and a front part of the career that is ace on a World Series winning team, you combine those together, and to me, it's Hall of Fame. He is probably the shakiest of the ones on this list, but I feel like maybe the peak didn't get as high, but the peak was really good. And then the fall off didn't go that low, basically all the way to the end, constantly getting 200 innings, constantly being a reliable pitcher. You have all of that for like 10 years after pitching as the number one on a World Series winning team, a dominant rotation for a World Series team. Yeah, that's Hall of Fame for me. So Mark Buehrle gets in. So my ballot only has 3, with Carlos Beltran, Andruw Jones, and Mark Buehrle. My just missed is Jimmy Rollins. At his peak, one of the best players in baseball. But I don't think that lasted as long as, say, Carlos Beltran's did. Like Beltran was up there for quite a while as one of the best players in baseball. With Jimmy Rollins, maybe it got a little higher, like MVP, right? So maybe it gets a little bit higher, but it didn't last as long. And then the fall off, I think, was quite a bit more significant than the 3 guys on my list. Like with Buehrle, again, ace, and then very reliable for a long stretch in his career. With Rollins, MVP, but then it falls off very, very quickly there. So the peak just didn't last long enough for me, but truly one of the best players in baseball in his time, and like should get every one of the accolades from the Philadelphia Phillies and every one of the honors that they put out there. But in terms of Hall of Fame, it comes up just a little bit short for me. Anyone missing from my Hall of Fame ballot? And is anyone on that shouldn't be? Let me know in either the chat or in the comments if you are watching this after the fact, and we can keep that baseball conversation going. You'll notice we got a baseball themed hat on here. That is from Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca. Get all this great Calgary swag, including Calgary Cannons, former minor league team of the Seattle Mariners. So check that out on seaofdead403.ca. We are going to move into the wrestling conversation now. Again, there is a pretty prominent bit of baseball news that we are hoping comes about here today. And if it does, we are going to jump into that conversation. And as always with all of our conversations here, if there's anything you want to talk about, I was not anticipating going that heavy into the radio stuff today, but if there's anything you want to chat about at all, throw it in the chat if you're watching live, and I'll finish up my point and we'll get into it and keep having some fun with those conversations. So yeah, just because I'm talking about something here doesn't mean that I don't want to talk about what you guys want to talk about there in the chat. Whatever you want, throw it in, and we can keep the convo going. But it's a pretty big night in the world of professional wrestling. So let's talk about TNA. We haven't done that a lot on this show. Admittedly, I would like to do more, but it's a big night for total nonstop action wrestling. So I thought let's give them some love and preview the show that they have coming up with Impact having a monumental night again, coming up here on Thursday. So, total nonstop action wrestling has, at times, been the cockroach of the wrestling world. At first, they start out in a pay-per-view format that no one really thinks is going to be able to go anywhere. Then they have some weird stints with clocks and scoreboards on the best damn sports show period. And then they're able to break through on Spike, and they have this grand run with AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, doing things that no one had ever seen before, complemented by veterans on the roster like Kurt Angle and Sting, but some poor decision-making and, just some poor decision-making, kind of led to another spiral for TNA, and then they would have a bit of an up and then down again, and up, and then down again. And so there were times where some of the ups may have felt like, pardon the aggressive terminology, but felt like the dead cat bounce, where, okay, that's great, but you're still not going anywhere. But yet here they are, getting on another relatively large television platform tonight, with Impact Wrestling making their debut on AMC, the network that brought us Breaking Bad and Walking Dead. It is very fitting that a network famous for zombies brings in what has felt like a zombie wrestling promotion for a number of years. TNA is having their first episode on AMC here tonight. And so I think the big thing for me with TNA, and they have had these problems for a long time, they have brought in some high-level names in the past, whether like big reset, Bruce Pritchard, Jim Cornette, all these people are in charge now. Eric Bischoff's in charge with Hulk Hogan. We're doing all of these things. And the first thing that Impact has always had when they go to a new network or bring in a new thing or whatever is they go on and on about how bad everything has been leading up to this point and now how it's going to turn around. That can't happen tonight. I think that there needs to be a balance between this is an exciting time, but there's a lot of good things that are already happening, because it is so hard to get into something when it's like, you know what, the way things have been done here, that's not going to cut it. We're really going to turn this sinking ship around. But here are all the performers you just watched on the show that we call The Sinking Ship. And so it's tough to get in it that way. Impact needs to balance the excitement of what is happening with the, we are also, like we want to improve on some stuff here now. So I think you have to have a little bit of like, hey, this is exciting, but also we're here because of how good everyone has been over the last little bit. There's also going to be some nostalgia tonight. I mean, obviously the main event, Frankie Kazarian is going up against Mike Santana for the TNA Championship. AJ Styles is going to be in attendance. Again, WWE has had some trouble at times going for like nostalgia, but also not really balancing the new all that well. So there needs to be that balance of nostalgia with AJ and Kazarian, but let's focus on Santana. Let's focus on some of the exciting young talent that we have in TNA. You cannot have this weird range of both or you cannot just have it's nostalgia, and nothing's really been progressed and go on. You can have a little bit of it, and TNA has not been great at times of being subtle with balance, but they're going to need to do that tonight. The other thing that I'm expecting, I think we all assume Mike Santana's winning the TNA Championship back. I think this is the night. Kazarian, again, this is that balance, nostalgia and now. Kazarian, legend when it comes to TNA. Should be TNA Hall of Famer, this, that, and the other thing. All of those big things need to happen. But Santana's the star for now. Santana is going to be the face of this brand probably for a bit now. So he needs to be the one that takes that center spot as the guy leading TNA. It's a huge opportunity for him coming up tonight. And I would expect at least one more surprise. I think wrestling fans can talk themselves into some big surprises with guys like Chris Jericho and stuff like that. Let's not overshoot those a little bit. Hey, let's not assume that, oh yeah, Chris Jericho is coming in, so that when Surprise X comes walking through the door, oh, bummer. Like what they did with when AEW brought Christian in. If they had just said, hey, Christian's signing in AEW, we'd be stoked. But people were talking about like Brock Lesnar and different other things coming in. And so when you compare it to Christian, well, it kind of falls off a little bit. But I'm expecting at least something big from Impact tonight. This is a big night for them. I have watched them do this a number of times, and I've watched them screw it up a lot. I would like for them to not do that this time around. So I think this is a really important night for them. What do you guys think? Does Impact catch your attention at all in the wrestling space? Let me know either in the chat or in the comments. Also, for wrestling fans, we are an hour 45 into this stream. If you're a wrestling fan and you don't just want to listen to all the sports before we get to the wrestling at the end, you can find the podcast Living Room Lariat wherever you get your pods. It is where all the wrestling stuff from Couch Potato Diary will live. Some exclusives going over on that side as well. Couch Potato's still going to have the big wrestling stuff, but for a bit more in-depth wrestling conversation, it is happening over on Living Room Lariat. Unfortunately, I do have to bounce. Got some stuff coming up here, so that's going to do it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, hanging out. Some really fun conversations were had here today. So yes, thank you for popping in. As always, if you are listening to the podcast after the fact, leave a review, hit that subscribe button. All those things really do help. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that share button and share this with some of your sports fan friends. And also, if you're watching on Twitch, follow, subscribe would be awesome. We do have the deal right now for gifted subscriptions, 35% off 5 gifted subs over on twitch.tv/primetimepk. So we can have that, going on as well. But whatever you do to take all of this in, I greatly appreciate it. I love you for it. Toxic over on Twitch. Yes, I will see you later for the Kyle Tucker's Now a Blue Jay stream that hopefully we'll be able to do here in a little bit on Couch Potato Diary.